All right, well, thank you all for joining us for this video today. This is our second installment of our 4-part series, What Do I Do Now? Steps Towards Survivor. Today, I actually have Jetzel. She's part of Casa de la Familia's DART advocate team. She's the lead DART advocate, excuse me, let me be clear on that. She's the lead DART advocate. So Jetzel, thank you so much for taking the time to have the conversation today. I'm really excited to get to tell our audience and viewers what DART is and kind of explain, what that, some people might not even heard of the DART team. So definitely looking forward to this discussion. So maybe if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what interested you in joining the DART team.
Well, thank you for having me on here. I'm really excited to speak about the DART team. But like Jessica mentioned, my name is Jetzel, and I'm the lead domestic violence advocate for the DART team with Casa de la Familia. So DART stands for the Domestic Abuse Response Team, and it is a team that is partnered with LAPD to provide immediate services to victims of domestic violence who have called 911. So I got interested in this position because I do have my college background in criminal justice, and I do want to continue my work working with victims potentially in a legal aspect. But as of right now, I do want to get the experience of being an advocate and promoting those services to victims, that they're not alone and that there is help. So like I mentioned, the DART team is a multidisciplinary team here in the city of Los Angeles, and we provide services to victims of domestic violence. This program was started by the mayor's office, and that is, we are under the mayor's office, Office of Public Safety. And so at each station, one of our advocates is partnered with a law enforcement officer from LAPD. And when there's a 911 call and they request our assistance, we are there to provide that service. We also are at the station, so if victims are interested in coming to speak to us at the stations, then they can just walk in and request to speak to a DART advocate.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I guess one of the main questions I want to start off with is, someone might not feel comfortable coming into the police station, or might not feel comfortable having conversations about what's going on with the police officer. What could you say to someone who is a bit fearful of accessing DART services, knowing that there's that direct connection to police officers and law enforcement? What could you do? What could you say to them to try to help some of that fear?
A lot of the people that we do assist and connect with, a lot of them are immigrants, people who might not have the best relationship with law enforcement. So a lot of them are fearful of making that initial contact with them and filing that police report. We are there to provide that assistance. We are not law enforcement. We're not connected. We're not employed by the mayor's office. We're employed by Casa de la Familia. We provide that third person to be there with them. And sometimes just explaining to them the process of what happens from the first contact, that if they do want to go through with the police report, to what happens with whether the case gets prosecuted or not, and what happens further after that. We're also there to provide that accompaniment to law enforcement interviews, to district attorney interviews. We're there with the person as much as they allow us to be. If they don't feel comfortable making that initial report, we do have victims that sometimes it does take a while for them to make that report, and we're just there to be there when they're ready to engage with law enforcement. And like I said, we are there to support them emotionally and physically, there for them.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for sharing. You mentioned about the restraining order. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important, and maybe why that needs to be part of the process, or why that is part of the process?
Do you mean obtaining the restraining order? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So sometimes victims want to get assistance with having the perpetrator move out of their home, and the restraining order can be one of the biggest things that can help them allow to have the perpetrator move out. There is a section on the order that says that there is a move out order. And sometimes that restraining order can be useful with victims who maybe don't want to engage with law enforcement or make that official police report, but they want to go through the restraining order and get that assistance themselves because they might be fearful of law enforcement. So that restraining order can help them with having a perpetrator move out, having the custody, physical and legal custody of their children temporarily, while they figure out more of a long-term safety plan for them and their families.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. So when someone either calls the main line to connect with a DART advocate, or they walk into a police station, what are some of the things that they can expect to be asked over the phone or asked in person? What happens during that initial contact with the DART advocate?
So one of the biggest things we do ask just for their safety is their authorization. So we do want to make sure that the person is in a safe location and that their emotional being and their well-being is safe. If we find that they are not and they require something, for example, emergency shelter, then that's the step that we would take. But we first and foremost do want to see if they're safe. After the initial contact, then we could assess and have a conversation about what it is that they're looking for and what it is that we can offer them. So if they are interested in, for example, leaving that relationship, or they want to get legal custody of their children or get a divorce, then that's where we would go about to see what services they would benefit from most.
Okay, awesome. I've heard this before when talking with people about, just letting them know that there is, these different DART advocates that are available, officers that are, specifically trained to be a part of the DART team, they're DART officers, and yet they still, have this thought of, well, why should I talk to a stranger? Like, this DART person doesn't know me. Why should I talk to a stranger? Why can't I just talk to my friends and family? If someone is having that kind of thought process, what would you say to them to help them understand the importance of having a DART advocate?
Sometimes, in a lot of domestic violence relationships, the perpetrator can isolate the victim from their families and friends. And it can be hard to reach out. I've had victims where they can't even reach out to their families because they don't believe them, or they don't trust them anymore, or they blame them for staying in this relationship. And so sometimes it can depend on the family dynamic that they have. Sometimes just speaking to an advocate, whether or not they accept services, but so that they can get their questions answered, can benefit them. Just if they want to maybe get that support from their family members but don't know where to start, we're more than welcome to speak to them or their family members if they want to start that conversation, because just having that conversation allows them to, maybe they're not ready right now, but they be ready in a few months, or it takes a while for some people to be initially ready, and it's hard for them to trust a stranger such as ourselves at a station. But yes, that is one of the things that we can do, because having that conversation can open those doors up in the long term.
Absolutely. You just mentioned actually about maybe there are some people who they try to talk to their friends or family and they don't believe them. Maybe the perpetrator has this appearance of, the perfect partner, and nobody else sees it except for the person that they're abusing. So maybe can you speak to someone who is watching and they feel as though if I call the DART advocate, they're not going to believe me like, my family doesn't believe me. What are some things that maybe you can tell someone who's watching that they've tried to talk to someone before and they don't have anyone that believes them so far?
All of our advocates are more than willing to listen. We are trauma informed and we are trained in domestic violence. Sometimes it is hard to trust someone such as ourselves as strangers, but having that open communication, like we're here, we believe survivors. We're here to provide that support, emotional, physical, mental well-being for the person. Sometimes I've had victims that law enforcement won't take a police report, but they are still able to get services through us. And that's what we're here for, to provide that emotional support.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that you clarified that sometimes, law enforcement, it doesn't deem it necessary to file that report, but
Mhm.
yeah, DART team, you're still there to provide that emotional and mental support to them. So I think that's amazing that you guys are able to fill that gap. Um, Something I was going to ask you, can you clarify how long the process takes when someone calls or either they walk in? How long should someone expect to either be on the phone or have that in-person conversation at the very start? So like that initial conversation, how long would that normally take?
So our services, our DART advocates are at the station 5 days out of the week.
Okay,
We are typically at each station during the station's peak hours.
okay,
These peak hours basically means that this is what the station has deemed is necessary, and that's when the most calls for domestic violence come out.
okay,
So if a victim walks into the front desk officer and says they want to speak to a DART advocate, the DART officer will just, excuse me, the front desk officer will just come get us, and we can essentially speak to them like in no time. When there is a call for domestic violence, that can be a little bit more different. When there is a call for 911, what
okay,
typically happens is the responding unit goes out, sees if a crime was committed, they secure the scene, interview witnesses, arrest someone if someone needs to be arrested.
okay,
At that time, the DART unit can be requested to also be on scene, and
okay,
that's when we come in. So it can happen almost immediately after the
okay,
call is made.
okay. For someone who is maybe thinking of coming in, but they need to bring their children with them, what happens in that situation if they don't have anyone to watch their kids, and they absolutely have to take them with them to the station?
Well, we can still be in the same room with the victim. We if they want to leave, if their children are of age, we can leave them outside in the lobby so that we can speak to the victim privately.
Okay.
If the children are smaller, then the victim is more than welcome to stay in the room with them. I know sometimes after a trauma, it might be hard for them to leave their children in another room or leave
Right.
them by themselves. So we're more than happy to speak to the victim, even if their children are there. Um,
Got it. Okay, awesome. What's the cost for someone to get involved with DART services?
so all of our DART services are free of charge. All of our advocates are open to having those conversations, and we're all free of charge. You're more than welcome to come to the stations and visit us, so you can talk to us about our services.
Okay, awesome. Since it is free, how long can someone receive DART services?
They can receive them for as long as they need them.
Okay.
Yes.
So what does that mean if someone, let's say, I'm in need of services and I call you, Jetzel, and then a week later, I'm like, I'm not really ready for this and I need to take a break. What happens when you find that someone's not ready to go the full term of journey of receiving DART services and they need to take a pause for a second?
We try to keep that open communication with the person.
Okay.
If they're not interested right now, but maybe they are at a later time, they're just not ready. We do provide them our contact information, our phone numbers, our emails, so that they can have that conversation with us. I've had victims who are not ready right now to file a restraining order, and I get a phone call from them 2 months later saying, I don't think I'm still not ready, but I think I might be. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what my options are? And can you answer these questions for me? So having that open communication with them and explaining to them that it doesn't matter how long it takes you, like we're still here to provide those services for you.
Got it. Got it. Um, what if someone is coming into the office or even calling for services and they feel as though they need immediate services? They need an immediate, response. What would you do in that situation, or what can you offer to someone who needs immediate support in terms of getting out of the situation that they're in right now?
So because DART is not 24 hours, 7 days a week, we do provide them with hotline numbers if they
Okay.
feel that they need support during those off times that we're not at the stations. If we are working and they need that support, then that's when we would provide it. If, for example, they need immediate housing or like they need to get in a shelter, we will get on the phone and call those shelters on their behalf so that we can find a placement for them that fits them. And if they have their children as well, we can also place their children with them.
Okay. Um, What if someone who's watching has a fear of, I can't call because my partner monitors my phone, or they might see, that I made this call and trace it back, or I can't come into the station because, that my partner might follow me. What can you tell to that person who's watching, who maybe has a fear of either being followed to a station to do a walk-in, or the partner is monitoring their phone and they don't feel comfortable calling?
A lot of the domestic violence, the National Hotline Domestic Violence, they have websites and numbers that we can text should a person be in physical danger and not be able to leave that relationship. A lot of those connections can also lead to organizations that might be closer to them. It is difficult to leave that relationship and go to the stations when their partner is doing that. And I think that's the importance of creating the safety plan. The safety plan to allow them to, when can they leave the house, if they can leave the house, what number should they call if they're in safety, what rooms to avoid if something were to occur. But our advocates are at the stations, and even if they can't call us or text us because they are being monitored, if we will find a way to get that communication open with that person if they're willing to have that communication with us as well.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned that there are DART advocates at the different stations. Maybe can you do a rundown of the different stations, the names, addresses, if you know them, just in case someone who's watching, they can say, oh, I know that that's close to my house.
Of course. So Casa covers a few stations. So first and foremost, we have Newton Division. We have Pacific Division, Wilshire Division, West LA Division, Olympic Division, Rampart Division. And we also have, we're also available at the Central Bureau Family Justice Center, which is near the LAC USC Medical Center in East LA.
Okay, so yeah, it seems like there's a lot of different options, for people, and they cover a wide area of LA County. So hopefully if someone's watching and they're close to any of the stations that Giselle listed off, the addresses are gonna be, in the comments. If you need to walk in, you can definitely, see which one is closest to your house and go in and get the services. A question I thought of, if someone is watching and they're thinking, I'm too young or I'm too old, is there an age limit for someone to receive services?
There's no age limit. We've had minors and we've had elders. There's no age limit to our services.
Awesome. Since you've been doing this work and working closely with the police, have you noticed that there's a shift in the mindset of the officers that you work with in terms of being more aware of domestic violence and what that can look like? What are some of the signs? Have you noticed any shifts in some of the officers that you've worked with?
So just as an FYI to our audience, so our advocates do provide roll call trainings to officers twice a week. That basically means that they go into the room where the officers are for that watch, and they provide them education on how to get an EPO, what does a restraining order look like, what does a court accompaniment look like, what do shelters, and all the services that victims of domestic violence are seeking. So we do see a shift with officers whenever they might, just making them aware that DART exists. They don't need to know, like every single thing that we teach them, but just knowing that we are there at the stations, we are available for them to call us out, and we are there for them to provide us with authorization forms if victims want to get connected. So I've seen that shift, and it's very, it's a great feeling, like having officers know that we're there to get that assistance and provide that welcoming sort of assist the victim with whatever we can.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. I feel like you may have already said something to this effect earlier in the discussion, but maybe if we can talk about it just a little bit more. For someone who calls and they're not necessarily ready, to go the full journey. And you said that you can, if they're not ready to do the restraining order and kind of file all the paperwork and do all of that stuff, you still can provide that emotional support to them. Maybe talk to someone who is watching, who's kind of in that ambiguous state of what would that support look like when someone's calling in and they're not necessarily ready to take any formal steps. What kind of emotional support would you be able to provide as a DART advocate to someone like that?
I think one of the most important things is sometimes just listening. We don't want to come in here and fix the situation because sometimes the person, like you mentioned, is not ready for these services, or to get out of this relationship, right? They might have this victim knows their situation better than we do. So listening to them is one of the most crucial things that we can do as advocates. Just listening to them and having that conversation to see if, hey, maybe this will work out, or maybe this won't work out. Maybe this isn't the right thing for me. A restraining order is not guaranteed for everyone. It's not the best course of action for everyone. Just like going to a shelter might not be the best thing for everyone. So we just having that open conversation and providing that open ear to them can make them maybe eventually have those questions and lead up to, hey, what would happen if I do this? Or hey, can I do this? Can make a change in their life, and maybe like a few weeks down the line when they are ready to leave, they know what actions they need to take. Should they contact us back or not? They at least know what course of action they should take so that they can get what it is that they're seeking for.
Right, absolutely. And you had also mentioned about the stations have identified the peak hours. So maybe if you have a general idea and can give some of the times, because I know it's not normally 9 to 5, right? That are the peak hours. So maybe if you can give a general overview of what those hours are, in case someone who is thinking, oh, I just want to get more information, I'm not ready to take any steps. What hours are the DART advocates available at the stations?
Typically, it's from Thursday to Sunday in the evenings. Some advocates do work earlier in the week and earlier in the day, but most of them are Thursday to Sunday. I would say between 2 to midnight.
Well, I think this has been a great conversation. Again, Jetzel, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and shed some light on what the DART team is and what services you all provide. Truly a valuable resource that we have here in LA County. I know some of the other counties have it as well, but specifically for LA County and just all the various different stations that the DART advocates are located in. So again, thank you for our viewers watching this second installment of our 4-part series. The third installment is actually going to be next week. That's a discussion with Laura's house and looking deeper into what happens when someone reaches out to a shelter, what that process entails, and what someone can expect. So for anyone that's viewing and needs to have a further discussion about the DART team or any other questions that may have popped up, and you want to have a discussion with Casa or one of the DART advocates, you can reach us at 877-611-2272. Again, that's 877-611-2272.